Yesterday, the Springbok 23 to face Wales was announced with a few surprising selections, which got me thinking, how many of the starting 23 players against Wales are going to feature against Ireland? In today's video, I'm going to give you my thoughts and opinions on who I think should start in that 23-man Springbok side against Ireland. As always, let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Still about 85% of you who watch this channel on a regular basis are not subscribed, so please take a moment to go and absolutely murder that subscribe button, and let's get in to the 23 to face Ireland. Now for the Ireland series, it's a little bit different to the Wales game because Rassie will have absolutely everyone available. The Bulls, as well as every player based in the UK, France, and so on. So he has a full squad to select from. Obviously, there are a couple of injuries, but let's compare the Wales team to my Irish team. Let's jump into it. So starting in the first prop position, obviously Ox Incher is starting against Wales, and I don't think Rassie is going to change anything for the Ireland test. Obviously, Stephen Kitsoff is currently injured. I think I would have started Kitsy first and then brought Ox in from the bench, just because I think Ox in the second half with his scrumming capability will absolutely destroy the Irish pack. But Stephen Kitsoff is not available for the Irish series, so I'm still going to start Ox Incher in that number one position for the Springboks. Going into that hooker position now, starting against Wales, Rassie Erasmus has gone for Malcolm Marx. For the Irish test, I do think it's going to be a little bit different. I think Rassie is trying to give Malcolm Marx some game time in a Springbok top because he's coming back from an injury. So I do think Malcolm Marx will probably play about 50 to 60 minutes and then Bongi will come on. But for the Irish test, I think Rassie Erasmus should start Bongi and Bonambe and then bring Malcolm Marx off from the bench. In my opinion, Malcolm Marx is more of an impact player than that of Bongi and Bonambe, and Malcolm Marx in a second half against a tied Irish pack is going to be way more lethal than if we start him up front. So starting against Ireland for me is Bongi and Bonambe. Then into that final prop position, Vincent Koch is starting against Wales, and it's come out now that Frans Malherbe said to Rassie, it's his 50th cap, let him start, I'll come off the bench, I don't mind. But for this Ireland test, I'm going to start Frans Malherbe just because I think he's a little bit more consistent than Vincent Koch, and Vincent Koch does provide that X factor coming off the bench in that bomb squad. Obviously, we're going to go over the prop options on the bench for the Springboks in a couple of minutes, but starting for me is Frans Malherbe. Then going into that lock position, Rassie has gone with Eben Etzebeth and Franco Mostert to start against Wales, and I don't think he's going to change too much for this Irish test. Sean Klein has been injured for Munster, hasn't been playing. Does he go for Salman Murat? Obviously the Bulls players are back. Does he go for Ruan Nokia? But I don't think he's going to change too much in that lock position. I think Rassie Erasmus is going to stay with Eben Etzebeth at 4, obviously, and then I do think Sos is going to start at 5, and that's exactly what I would pick. So for me, Eben at 4, Sos at 5. Let's move into that loose trio where it gets a little bit more tricky, maybe a little bit more controversial, especially with the selections that I've made. Now for the Wales test, Rassie has gone Kwagga Smith at 6, Pieter Steph de Toy at 7, and Evan Roos at 8. Now, Siya Kolisi is eligible to play because he plays his rugby over in France. It's now outside of the international break. So does Rassie Erasmus bring in Siya Kolisi in that number 6 position? Now, there have been a couple of articles that have come out in the past 24 to 48 hours of the Racing 92 coach almost slating Siya Kolisi for his performance in a Racing 92 top. After his injury, he came back and the coach has said that he's slow, he's overweight, he's not in shape, and he just hasn't had that impact for Racing 92 that was expected of him. So will Siya Kolisi make my team against Ireland? I'm not going to start him. I think there's way better options at the moment in terms of form, and we need that form going into this big Ireland series. So for me at number 6, I'm going to go with Ulrich Loh, who's had a phenomenal season for the Bulls. He's now eligible to play because it's outside the international break, and hopefully the Bulls have won the URC by the time that Irish series comes around. So for me, Ulrich Loh at 6. 7, I'm not going to change anything there. Pieter Steph de Toy, probably one of the first names you put down on a Springbok team sheet. And then we can start sort of talking about the captaincy options, because Bongi is starting, Eben Etzebeth is starting, and Pieter Steph de Toy is obviously starting. So as long as none of them get injured, they will be the captain options. Obviously, Pieter Steph de Toy has been named captain for the Wales test, and I don't think Rassie is going to change that, especially if Siya Kolisi isn't in the starting lineup. So for me, Pieter Steph de Toy will stay as captain just to sort of have that continuity continuation. I don't think he'll change it against Ireland if Siya Kolisi doesn't start. Then into that number 8 position again, where it gets a little bit tricky. Obviously, Ivan Ruiz is starting against Wales. I do think that's very deserved. He's had a very, very good season for the Springboks, but I think against Ireland, Rassie is going to go for a little bit more experience in that number 8 jersey. And as you'll see, I left Kwagga Smith out from the flank position, and I'm actually going to start Kwagga Smith at that number 8. Dwayne Vermeulen, obviously retired. Jasper Visser has a 6-match ban, so he is not eligible to play. Kwagga has all that experience. He has that X factor, and I really, really like him in that number 8 jersey for the Springboks. So Kwagga Smith closes out the pack for me. I think that's a very, very strong pack. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments. If you would bring someone in for someone else, let me know. And then let's move in to the back line. Now for the back line, we're going to start with scrum off. Faf de Klerk has been picked to start against Wales. I thought that was a little bit of a surprising pick because I thought Rassie would experiment just a little bit with that scrum off position. He has Grant Williams, he has Morne van den Berg. Now for the Ireland series, someone like Kobus Reinach is back. So does Rassie start Kobus Reinach? Does he start Grant Williams? Does he stick to Faf de Klerk? For me, I think he's going to stick with Faffy at number 9. That's who I would select to start against Ireland. I think he just knows the system so well. He's played against Ireland a couple times. He's obviously won a couple of World Cups, so he's very, very experienced, and that is what the Springboks are going to need on match day against the Irish. At number 10, Rassie went for Jordan Hendrickse at 10 for Wales. I think that's purely experimental. There's a couple of stats that have come out that Jordan Hendrickse is a very, very solid number 10 on defense. That is not my worry with Jordan Hendrickse. It's the kicking, it's the patience game against Wales, and we're going to see this Saturday if he has what it takes. But against Ireland, for me, I'm going to have to go for Handré Pollard. Now, Pollard hasn't had a great season for the Leicester Tigers, but he just is a different animal when you put him in that Springbok top. So for me, Handré Pollard definitely gets a 10 jersey against Ireland with the combination of him and Faf, who know each other so well. I think that's going to work perfectly. Obviously, Manie Libbok hasn't been picked against Wales. Like I said, I think Rassie is just experimenting there a little bit. Manie Libbok could still start against Ireland, but for me, I'm going to go for Pollard. Then we move in to that number 11 jersey. Now, Rassie Erasmus has gone for Makazole Mpimpi against Wales. Understandable. He plays for the Sharks. He's eligible to play. Curtly Orange and Cheslin Colby are currently injured. Canan Moodie is currently injured. Whether he's going to be back or not is the question. There are reports saying that Cheslin Colby will be fit for the Irish series, so it makes sense to put Cheslin Colby in that number 11 jersey against Ireland, and that is who I'm picking. He's one of the most destructive players on attack. He's good under the high ball. His defense is solid. So Cheslin wins that number 11 jersey for me. Moving into the centre pairing, and another surprise pick from Rassie in that Wales, for the Wales test, Andre Esterhuizen at 12, and then he's played De Lende on the bench. Now, that's telling me that De Lende is probably going to get 20 to 25 minutes at the end just to get a run in that Springbok jersey. I have no doubt that Damien De Lende is going to start against Ireland. He's my 12 that I've picked to start against Ireland, and he pairs very, very well with Jesse Kriel. Now, obviously, Lukhanyo has been injured for a while. Whether he's going to be fit and back for that Irish series, I'm not too sure yet, but even if he is fit, I still think Jesse Kriel gets that jersey over Lukhanyo. The only really other player you have to look at is Canan Moodie. Is Canan Moodie going to be fit for the Irish series? Jake White is quite confident that he will be. I just don't think Canan Moodie gets in at that 13th position above Jesse Kriel at the moment. Jesse Kriel was one of the most impactful players at the 2023 World Cup. He's had a great season over in Japan. And I just don't see where Canan Moodie is going to fit into this backline at the moment. So for me, Jesse Kriel in that number 13 position. 14, Curtly Orange has been injured, but it is likely that he will be back for the Ireland series. Obviously, Edwin van der Merwe is playing against Wales, but I think if Curtly Orange is fit, there's no doubt that Curtly is going to slot right back in to that number 14 jersey. Now, I am saying all of this, there is still opportunity for all these players playing against Wales to play themselves into the team against Ireland. This is just who I'm going to pick before the Wales test. So for me, Curtly Orange gets that 14 jersey. Now into the 15 jersey, and again, very, very interesting because Apelele Fassi has been picked at 15 to play against Wales. They haven't gone for Kieran Horn. Willie Leroux playing for the Bulls, and he got injured against Leinster. I'm not too sure if he's going to be ready for the final this weekend, but I do think he will be ready for that Ireland series. He's been playing some phenomenal rugby for the Bulls, and it just makes sense for me to put Willie Leroux in that 15 jersey. So experienced in a Springbok top. I think he's got 94, 95 caps for the Springboks, and the form that he's sort of played himself into in the season for the Bulls is remarkable. So that closes out my starting 15. Now we're going to get into the bench, and there's a couple of changes here. I've gone for a different split to that of Rassie Erasmus that he's playing against Wales, and I do think the correct split for the Ireland test is a 6-2 split. So starting us off with the hooker position, obviously Malcolm Marx will be on the bench for me. Bongi and Malcolm Marx are interchangeable. I just think Marx is a better impact player coming off the bench than that of Bongi and Mbonambe. Then for the two props now, this is where it does get a little bit iffy. You've got Trevor Onyekanye that can play. You've got Vincent Koch. You've got Mchunu. There's a couple of other guys that can definitely slot in from the Bulls, like a Wilco Low or Gerrit Steenkamp. But for me, I'm going to go for Mchunu on the bench. I think he's one for the future, one to build into the 2027 World Cup. It's going to be interesting to see how he goes against Wales, but I do think he's going to get a spot on the bench against Ireland. Then for the final prop, do we go for Koch? Do we go for Trevor Onyekanye? For me, I'm going to go for Vincent Koch on the bench. I think he's had a better season than Trevor at the moment. Trevor is also 35, not saying that he's old, but I don't know if he's going to be in the thinking and the planning for the 2027 World Cup. So it makes more sense for me to put Vincent Koch in there on the bench in that number 18 jersey. We then get into the locks and Lucy's. We have three more forwards to include. So for this specific game against Ireland, I think Rassie should pick one lock on the bench because Pieter-Steph du Toit can fill in into those lock positions for either Eben Etzebeth or Franco Mostert. So for me, I'm going to go for Argeas Snyman on the bench. I think he is a phenomenal player, especially coming off the bench for the Springboks, an impact player who can really shift the momentum of the game. The last two forwards I'm going to include is Siya Kolisi, who I think probably just needs a little bit of game time in a Springbok top. Obviously, if the game's close, he can come on, he brings that leadership, he can talk to the boys, and he knows the system so well. So having Siya just get a couple of minutes, 10 to 20 minutes in that first test against Ireland, I do think is vital, because what the media has been saying, what the Racing 92 coach has been saying, has definitely probably knocked his confidence just a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him not start, but I would like to see him on the bench for the Springboks. Then the final player who's going to round off my bomb squad for the Boks is not Evan Roos. I just think he's going to miss out. I wouldn't select him on the bench just because of the form that Cameron Hanekom has been in. I prefer Kwagga Smith starting at 8 above Evan Roos, and then having him come off the bench, yes, is an option, but I prefer Cameron Hanekom just because of the form he's in. I think give him 20 minutes at the end, 25 minutes at the end, sort of blood him as a Springbok, get his confidence up, get a little bit of experience, and then potentially even look to start him in the next test or into the Rugby Championship. So I think that's also a little bit of a hot take, putting Cameron Hanekom on the bench over Evan Roos. Then into the two backline players, and I think there's really only two players you can pick here. Obviously, you could put Kobus Reinach on the bench, but I just think Grant Williams allows a little bit more of utility into that scrum half position, into the wings, potentially even fullback. And then rounding off the bench for me is Sasha Feinberg Mgumazulu, who can play 10, 12, 13 wing fullback. He's the perfect utility back to add to this Springbok 23. So that's how I see my 23-man Springbok lineup against Ireland coming up in a couple of weeks. Let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments. If you haven't, please absolutely mold that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take it easy. Peace.